My name is Amy Livingston, she, her pronouns. I'm chair of Senate District 63 for the DFL party. I am really grateful to the incredible turnout that we've had tonight and to our wonderful candidates here who are going to speak with us a little bit about their vision for the Senate District and their views on a wide variety of issues. I'd like to introduce today Eric Ferguson, who is our technology chair. He's going to be sharing hosting duties with me. So if you have any questions, please direct those to us in the chat. Right now, I am going to put everybody on mute and have it as a requirement where you need to have one of the hosts put you off of mute. That way, as our candidates are giving their statements, they'll be able to do so uninterrupted without any interruption from anybody else who is not on mute at the time. If you do have any questions, we're hoping to get through about 5 planned questions, and then we've got a couple more if we've got extra time. At which point we will have a round. So we will start out with introductions. Then we will do 5 rounds of questions with alternating order. After that, we will allow each candidate 3 minutes to do a clarification or an expansion round, and then we'll do a closing round. With that, I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Representative Emma Greenman, who is our candidate for House District 63B. Unfortunately, she showing the life of an incumbent and what our candidates are looking to go for has been scheduled for a last-minute hearing tonight, and so will be unable to participate for the whole time, but did want to stop by and give a brief introduction or a brief presentation to everybody. I'm very grateful for the bill that she will be presenting. She will be speaking on a bill that is going to help our BIPOC small business owners receive some funding to rebuild. So very exciting to have her present that bill. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma and see if, and have her take over, so.
Well, thank you, everybody. This is amazing turnout. I am really grateful for Amy and the whole Senate District team, who I think has been working really hard to navigate this in the last couple of years. For folks who don't know me, because I know we have a new Senate District, I had the honor of receiving the endorsement in 2020 and being elected in 2020. And for folks who are, I think about 30% new in the district, I really look forward to building a relationship. I look forward to earning your support and really look forward to the work ahead, because I think that what I'm so grateful for about this district, about our community, and about this DFL Senate District is how active and engaged folks are. Like when I told Amy that we had this bill up, there's been a lot of work on the work that our small businesses and mainstream businesses need to rebuild, a lot of work as it relates recently to teachers and education. So I'm just really grateful for all your participation. For folks who don't know me and haven't heard me, I'm a voting rights lawyer who got my start as an organizer on the Wellstone campaign. And that's where I fell in love with the power of politics, the power of a multiracial, multi-generational politics. And it is that power of us that I believe in our communities and across the state, we really can harness to ensure that we have a Minnesota that works for everybody. And as I approached my first term in the House, it was really that power of us manifested it in a different way, but that I saw in the House. It is bridging difference. It is building a stronger progressive majority, and it's really hard work. It's work that we can't do alone. We can't do alone. Legislating is a team sport, and it is also can't do it alone without the engagement of the activists, the organizers, the political folks, and all of the voters and communities in our district. And so I am really grateful. I think we probably have a few folks on here who have been represented by Representative Jamie Long, Representative Aisha Gomez, and I am so proud to partner with them. For folks who, and I want to talk a little bit about the moment we're in, as I'm thinking about it, because it really is a make or break moment for democracy, for our economy, and for our climate. I came to the House to do that urgent work of repairing and reimagining our democracy, of ensuring that our kids, our workers, our communities are at the center of our policymaking and the center of the change that we're seeking. And when I think about this year or going into 2022 and what the future looks like, I think we need to prioritize our kids. We've been having lots of conversations about the teacher strike. We've been having lots of conversations at the Capitol about fully funding public education, which impacts and the state funding impacts and hits Minneapolis public schools the hardest. Expanding educators of color, reducing our opportunity gaps are all things that we have been working on. And I am a Minneapolis public school kid who was in special education until 5th grade. And I know the educators, the teachers, the paras, all of the adults in the building got me where I am. And I know that the contract they negotiated is just a start, but the values that they were fighting for are things that we need to reinforce and fight for at the state level. We need to prioritize our kids' future. And that means addressing the climate crisis and making sure that they have a planet that is sustainable and available. And it means prioritizing our workers. That has been an important priority for me. Actually on Monday, I had my first bill on the floor. We passed it, protecting the worker safety of Amazon workers who are getting injured at a rate, are disproportionately East African immigrants. And it is time that our laws step up and protect all of our workers in Minnesota. And to do all of that, we have to defend and strengthen our democracy. I know we've been talking a lot about it. We talked a lot about it at the Capitol too. I was sworn in on a Tuesday. The January 6th insurrection was on a Wednesday. And on a Thursday, I introduced my first bill, which was the Democracy for the People Act, which was really prioritizing voting rights, prioritizing the freedom to vote, and ensuring that we are expanding access to the ballot, expanding and ensuring that those 55,000 Minnesotans in our communities who are on probation and parole have access to the ballot. I won't stop fighting on that democracy front. I won't stop fighting for our kids and our workers and our families and our futures. And I know that it can't just be me or the candidates, the great candidates we have in the other side of our districts and running across the state. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us and all of you with us fighting for policy that expands the freedom to vote, that invests in our kids, that protects workers, that tackles the climate crisis and our racial and economic inequities. It's going to take all of us, and it's what we. I'm really excited as we get into the convention. We're talking about to elect pro-democracy, progressive DFL majority in the House and the Senate. And this year, that's going to be real work. We're going to hold on to that House majority, but it's going to take all of us knocking on doors and doing that work together to flip the Senate and to hold on to the House. And what we know in our district, we had 90% voter turnout in 2020 in 63B, and I know right next door in 61 and right next door in 62 also had incredibly high turnout. We need that turnout. We need to ensure that our neighbors, that folks are invited into the process because that's how we're going to re-elect our governor, our lieutenant governor, our great attorney general, Keith Ellison, our great secretary of state, Steve Simon, and our great auditor. So I believe in us. I believe in the work we can do together, the strong DFLers. I believe in that we can expand our base and expand the work. And I know that work starts tonight. It's already started. And so I just want to say thank you again. I would love to earn and appreciate earning your endorsement. And I also will say that for the folks who we haven't met yet, I'm really looking forward to meeting you. We're doing some delegate meet and greets. I've been on the phones calling folks, but please feel free to reach out. For folks who know me and have been in my district for a while, I do this work with you. And so really excited on both the political side and the policy side to get to know you and figure out how we can harness that power of us to build together. So thank you, Amy, for letting me go. I can stick around for a little bit, but we do have committees this evening, second deadline. So I just, again, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to folks and look forward in the coming weeks to build relationships.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Thank you for coming and attending. We really appreciate it. With that, I would love to introduce our 4 candidates who are also here tonight. We've got Zainab Mohammed, who is running for SD 63 state Senate seat. We've got Yusra Arab, who is running for SD 63A House seat. We've got Kevin McDonald, who is running for the SD 63, or sorry, House District 63A seat. And then we've got and then we've got Samantha Sensamura, who is running for the House District 63A seat as well. I apologize, they're trying to do a couple of different technology items at once with the Zoom call here. Thank you everyone for coming and really appreciate it. We've done a random drawing ahead of time to determine order for the speaking list. And so for opening statements, each candidate will have 3 minutes to do their opening statements, at which point I will give you warnings at 1 minute and at 30 seconds in the chat. The order that we will go in is Zainab Mohammed, then Yusra Arab, then Samantha Sensamura, and Kevin McDonald. What I will do now is, bear with me. Zainab, I'm going to grab your image here and I'm going to put you as the spotlighted presenter. Bear with me.
Oh my goodness, it says the host has spotlighted you.
All right.
Can you just
Yep.
I feel like this is awesome. Okay, let me know if you have any issues, if you can't hear me or not. But I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, Amy, for all the work you do. Really appreciate you. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. My name is Zainab Mohammed. I'd first like to introduce myself. My name is Zainab Mohammed. I'm running for state Senate in our district to represent you in the Senate. And I'm running to make our lives easier, not harder. A little bit about myself. When I was 9 years old, my family and I immigrated to Minneapolis from Somalia. I grew up in a union household. My mom is a shift worker at a potato processing factory, and my dad is a custodian service industry worker. From a young age, my siblings and I worked part-time jobs to help our family pay the rent. I helped my family access government services like immigration support, healthcare, the public school system. My early years here in Minnesota were tough, as you can imagine. My family moved a lot. I went to 4 different schools. None of us had healthcare, but we all supported each other and our community had our backs. These challenges taught me important life values like compassion, perseverance, but they also showed me that we need systematic change to better support families like mine. Our city has been through a lot over the last few years. The murder of George Floyd, a pandemic that continues to take the lives of our neighbors, and an economic recovery that has left so many people behind. These problems showed us the social, economic, health barriers that hold back Minnesotans from achieving their potential. They also highlight the need for strong leadership and effective government during times of crisis. Right now, the economy is not working for everyone. Many Minnesotans are facing steep financial challenges as the cost of basic living expenses like healthcare, childcare, groceries are increasing. The rent goes up, but the wage stayed the same. Meanwhile, corporations rake in record profits while lobbying for lower taxes. I'll make this commitment to you right now. If you elect me as your senator, I will do everything in my power to address these issues and make real economic improvement in your life. I will fight for universal health care. I'll fight for paid family medical leave, and I will fight for statewide $15 minimum wage because one job should be enough. I'm so excited to be running for this office. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be a part of this community, to build and to work with all of you. I hope that you will endorse me in the Minnesota Senate, for the Minnesota Senate. And I hope that you'll work with me this year to ensure that we flip the Senate and we get back the majority so that we can do the important work that is ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zainab. I'm now going to turn it over to Yusra.
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Good evening, everyone. Let me start off by thanking the SD 63 for organizing tonight's conversation and for everyone who's attending. My name is Yusra Arab. I am a mother, a mental health practitioner, a renter in the Cochrane neighborhood, and a proud Black Muslim immigrant. I'm running to represent all of our communities here in District 63A of the Minnesota Legislature. I'm running to serve our district, the capital, because we're experiencing some of the most complex challenges in our state's history. We need to tackle the most pressing issues facing our communities, issues like addressing our public safety crisis so that everyone in our state feels safe in their communities, regardless of what they look like or where they live. Making sure that our children have access to high quality and stable education system. Creating systems where every Minnesotan has access to affordable and quality healthcare, including mental health care. Ensuring everyone has a safe, stable, affordable home, and working to create a more just, safe, and welcoming state for everyone, the same way it was for me when I initially arrived here. That is why we need leaders who are ready to meet this moment with collaboration, transparency, and political will to get things done. I believe I have the vision, the experience, both professional and lived, and the commitment to do just that. With our recent redistricting, our district is more diverse than ever before. That is why we should use this opportunity to elect more leaders who reflect the growing diversity of our communities and our state. Leaders who have personal experience with the issues we're facing firsthand. Leaders who are ready to bring the diverse voices of their constituents into our decision-making processes and work with them to develop real, sustainable solutions. With your help, I'm ready to be that leader. Again, my name is Yusra Arab. I'm looking forward to answering all your questions tonight and hopefully earning your support at our Senate convention next Saturday, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Yusra, very much. Right, next, I am going to ask Samantha Sensimura to speak. Sorry, bear with me, just lost you in the... And you should be able to speak now.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Amy and the Senate District for organizing tonight. My name is Samantha Sensimura. I'm an educator, a working mom, a leader of a local community organization, a fourth generation Japanese American, and I'm running to be the next state representative for District 63A. I got into this race because I'm from this community, I love this community, and I want us to have policies that reflect our values. I know that this community values equity, safety, and care, and currently our policies are falling short. I know our community values equity, and right now our public schools are not delivering on that promise. I know this from my time as a student in Minneapolis Public Schools, from my last 11 years working as an educator, and from the last 5 years where I've been executive director of an education nonprofit in this district. Students of color and white students are having very different educational experiences and outcomes, and that's why I have been fighting for educational justice. If elected, I'll continue that fight to ensure our students have the resources that they absolutely deserve. And I know our community values safety. We believe that everyone deserves to be safe and that everyone deserves to have someone they can call in times of crisis. Immediately after the murder of George Floyd, my neighbors and I in Corcoran came together. We met regularly, got to know one another in times of crisis, and we tried to learn new ways to keep each other safe. Our communities came together in the summer of 2020, and we're still learning and growing together. As a leader, I will work to figure out how to take that collective experience and turn it into new public safety policies. And finally, I know our community values care. I felt it, especially over the last 7 months since I have welcomed my son Tadashi into the world. But what I felt in that experience was that our healthcare system was falling incredibly short. My son was born 5 weeks early due to my having developed preeclampsia. His birth was dangerous, it was unexpected and sudden. And in the end, he had to spend 2.5 weeks in the NICU while he adjusted and learned to eat on his own. The advice that I got from all of the amazing nurses at North Memorial Hospital was that the best thing I could do during that time was spend as much time in the NICU with my son. We would have to leave every night, but I would come back every day by his side, trying to help him learn to eat and breastfeed. And what I saw there broke my heart, because I saw that other parents did not have that same opportunity because they did not have access to paid family leave. Parents were not able to be with their children during that critical time because they had to go back to work. That kind of choice between work and family is not a choice that anyone should have to make. We need to have policies of care, and we need to have a paid family and medical leave policy. When my family has faced critical and challenging moments, like the birth of my son, our community has shown up for us with care. People brought us food, gave us rides, and reached out. But right now, we do not have that same level of care from our government or our policies. We need our policies to match our values and the care we have for one another. I believe that a Minnesota that reflects our values is possible. And if you believe that too, I hope you will support me in the DFL convention on April 9th.
Thank you very much, Samantha.
Good
Thank you.
evening. I'm Kevin
Yeah.
McDonald, and I am seeking your endorsement to be the next representative of 63A. I live in the Hiawatha neighborhood with my wife, Sharon, and my 2 college-aged daughters. And through community service, I have come to know so many of you. I've experienced firsthand how rewarding it is to team with neighbors, with volunteers, and with parents. And together, I believe that we have improved our neighborhoods and our schools. And I take great pride in what we have over the past 3 decades accomplished together. In my work life, I've been so fortunate to work with many, both inside state government and outside of state government. I'm a 35-year environmental professional, and people know me as the founder of Minnesota Green Corps. It's one of the most recognized environmentally themed AmeriCorps programs in the US. You know, others know me of my tenacious efforts to get the lead out of fishing tackle. I secured a $1 million penalty from the Deepwater Horizon, the British Petroleum Company, to help common loons recover from the devastating impacts of the world's largest oil disaster. Upon entering this race early on, I made it clear the core of my candidacy is climate change. This is not something of the distant future. We're seeing the harmful effects across our state today. My campaign thesis is this: we must act with much greater urgency to fight climate change. The climate crisis is the issue of our lives. You know, like so many of you, I'm very passionate about healthcare as a basic human need. I see the need to strengthen our educational system. I want to fight for an effective and professional and service-oriented public safety system. We don't have that across the state today. We don't have that in Minnesota. If I am so honored to be your next state rep, I pledge to listen to you, to tap into your collective wisdom, your talents, and your experience. I believe I am that experienced change maker, that seasoned collaborator, that candidate with a record of community service, that neighbor who is ready to join with you to face the big challenges with grit and determination. I believe that Minnesota can continue to do great things. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I am going to get us set up for our question portion of the evening now. Thank you again to everybody who's attended here. I really appreciate it. I am putting a link in the chat right now. I'm going to do that shameless plug of fundraising. As you know, we've got a endorsing convention coming up, and unfortunately, those always come with their own costs, such as paying for the digital platform that we're going to be using, as well as covering costs for interpreters and providing tools for folks who do not have, providing rentals for folks who do not have the access to those and such. So as we go forward, I am going to, here, bear with me, get everybody spotlighted here. Anyways, we would really appreciate if everybody would be able to help out with any donations that you are able to make. It helps us not only to run our own conventions, but then on top of that, we are a very strong Democratic district. So that gives us quite the advantage once we get into the general. And so then usually what we do is we end up pivoting to share our funds with candidates who are in swing districts. So with that, I'm going to, here we go. All right. So for this first round of questions, the order is going to be Yusra Arab, and then Samantha Sensimura, and then Kevin McDonald, and then Zainab Mohammed. Eric, would you like to introduce the first question? And then I will highlight each person as they come up to speak. It appears I can only spotlight one person at a time, so I will highlight each person as you come up to speak. So sorry about that.
Okay, there we go. All right. So I'll hop over here. So we had a bunch of questions submitted. There was a lot of similarity amongst the questions. So what we've done is we basically consolidated them, since we had people asking differing questions, but kind of going to the same point. And so we've hopefully boiled them down, and we're going to give the candidates a chance to address at least broadly the issues that were being brought up. So question number one. Education is emerging as one of the top issues in races across Minnesota and Minneapolis. Education is emerging as one of the top issues in races across Minnesota, and Minneapolis is facing a crisis in public education. How will you work at the Capitol to improve education locally and statewide? And we're starting off here with Yusra.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think every parent and guardian who has a child in our public school system particularly understands the importance and the value of our children's education. Our children have dealt with a lot, from navigating the global pandemic, the civil unrest in our city, and the strikes as our educators and support professionals, we're voicing the need to provide our students with a safe and stable schools that they deserve. We have seen what can happen when we get things wrong. To me, investing in our state's future means investing in the education of our children. We need to prioritize a cradle to career approach to education in Minnesota and to ensure that every child has a pathway to upward mobility in our state. I'm passionate about working to improve our education systems, including supporting options like providing high quality early education and universal pre-K for every child, increasing our state support for child care programs, fully funding our public school systems, and addressing our funding mechanisms to increase the per pupil funding formula and tying it to inflation annually so that it can be more equitable funding system. Also ensuring that investments in public resources produce improved student learning experiences and outcome is key, and focusing on making higher education attainable for those students who want to take that pathway to college, but also encouraging other career pathways like apprenticeship programs, vocational jobs, and so forth and so on. For me, I went to our public schools. I graduated from Washburn High School. And if I'm being honest, I do not think it prepared me for college, especially as an immigrant, as someone who English is their second language, and as someone who comes from a house where I couldn't get assistance with homework. I couldn't get assistance like my peers could. So I felt very
30 seconds.
developed when I got to college. We have a $9 billion surplus, and I think this is the time that we need to invest in our children, and that should be a key priority at the legislature. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Yusra. All right, next we will jump to Samantha.
All right. Do you need me to reread the question?
No, I got the question. Thank you so
Okay.
much. So education is my number one issue. I was a Minneapolis public school student, and my work is really grounded in my time and experience in Minneapolis public schools. I attended South High School in our district, which most folks in our community know is distinctive for not having any windows. But when I think about my time as a student in Minneapolis public schools, I often say that I attended schools that did not have mirrors. I don't mean physical mirrors, but I mean the metaphorical mirrors that young people now and then who are suffering from lack of reflection need to succeed. A story that shows this came at the end of my freshman year of high school. In a world studies class, we had spent almost the entire year focused on learning just about Europe. And by the time spring came, I was frustrated. I stayed after class to ask my teacher when we would learn about any other continent. And my teacher told me that I could learn about other continents when I got to college. As a fourth generation Japanese American, I did not have the chance in our school system to learn about my ancestors' history in this country. And that made me feel shut out and shut down by the school system. Our schools today still fail to serve our students, especially students of color. I think most people on this call know that today is the second day that Minneapolis public school students are back in school after almost 3 weeks of striking. And this is coming during one of the most challenging years ever in education. This time has been so hard for everyone, for families and students that were struggling to get childcare, that were losing wages from having to stay home. I am so happy for the small wins that the unions were able to make. And I'm happy that our educators and students are back in schools that are
30
one
seconds.
step closer to the schools they deserve. But they're not enough. First and foremost, our students deserve the funding that they are owed. Secondly, we need to make sure that schools are meeting the needs of students of all students, but particularly students of color. I'm for increasing the Teachers of Color Act because who is in the classroom matters. I'm for passing ethnic studies because all students deserve access to an honest and accurate curriculum. And I'm for building full service community schools that can provide wraparound supports that our students desperately need, including mental health supports. I have a
Time.
background in education. It's what got me into this race, and I'm excited to fight for students at the state capitol.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see, next is, that's order here. Kevin. Kevin, do you want me to reread the question?
Good, Eric, but thank you. First of
Okay.
all, I just want to acknowledge that my fellow candidates, they're great, and they've put a lot of thought and effort both on this issue and in their campaigns in general. It's a real honor for me to be with them this evening, running and speaking to delegates. So I can say that, I know firsthand that education is the great equalizer. I'm a first generation college educated person. My dad lost his father when he was in high school, and he left college to support his mother. My mother came from a very small town in Minnesota. I don't think at the time in the 1950s, there was as much support as there is today for women to go on to college and beyond. So I'm very proud of that. I see education, our education system, as something that really creates opportunities. And when we have weak ones, what it does is it widens inequalities, and it really divides us as a society. So, count me in as somebody who is unwavering in my support for students, for the teachers, for childcare providers. It starts before K-12. I will, as a state legislator, put
30 seconds
interests first. So, I've been pretty clear in my campaign that the issue is around special education and ELL. People who are educational professionals call this the cross subsidy. I seek to bridge that gap. Flexible funds that we use to fill that cross subsidy are being taken away from teachers, from students. And so that's number one. The other thing I'm really worried about is mental health services. We need high quality learning environments. Addressing mental health services is key.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and tell you what, candidates, just go ahead and tell us if you want the questions reread, and we won't keep asking you over and over and over again and being annoying.
Yeah.
At least not in that way. So Zainab.
Yeah, no worries. I remember. Thank you so much. I think that's a really, really important question, and one that will for sure be coming up at the doors. For the first time in 50 years, we saw our public educators go on strike. And I think what that shows us is the disparity in our public education system, both in our teachers, but also within our students. Minnesota has one of the largest achievement gaps in the country. And I say this very often, and I really mean it as an immigrant Black student who went through our ELL programs, who went through our public education. I am lucky that I'm not a statistic, and I will work my hardest to ensure that our educators are getting the adequate resources that they need. I support funding. I believe that our public schools are underfunded, and many students do not have the public education, the world-class education that we pride ourselves on and that they deserve. I believe that we need to provide free school lunch for our students, regardless of their income. And I will ensure that we have public schools I will fight for our public schools to be fully funded and ensure that we have bonded projects for schools and colleges and universities, because all of our educators deserve to not go on strike, to be paid adequately, and for our students to have programs that are fully funded, like the ELL program that I went through, that should be fully funded. We need to have mental health programs that should be fully funded. And our teachers should not have 2-3 jobs. One job should be enough.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We had a question asking if we could share the questions in the chat. So I'm just doing that right now so that everybody can see that. Thank you, Zainab. We are now going to move on to a question about infrastructure. There are many areas where Minnesota's infrastructure could use a complete rethink, an overhaul, or other improvements. This includes our water systems, roads and bridges, public transit options, power grids, internet access, etc. What would you choose to focus on when you are elected to go to the Capitol? We will start this question with Samantha, and then go to Kevin, then Zainab, then Yusra.
Thanks so much. When I think about this question, I think about a really exciting proposal from Our Streets Minneapolis, which is called Rethinking I-94 and the Twin Cities Boulevard Project. I think a lot of us know that in the US and in Minnesota and in our city particularly, that highways have been a tool of systemic racism, and they have devastated a lot of our communities, including the communities living off Highway I-94 or I-35W. So as I understand it, this Rethinking I-94, the Twin Cities Boulevard proposal came about because, our infrastructure on those highways is insufficient, and in the next 10 years or so is going to have to be redone. And I think that originally, the proposals were for very kind of meager or mediocre changes, right? Getting rid of one lane, kind of just condensing the highway a little bit. And instead of Our Streets, after talking to people, after really dreaming big and being bold about what is possible around our infrastructure, came up with a proposal to essentially get rid of the highway and to turn it into a boulevard. And a boulevard that could really prioritize what are the needs of people in our city in terms of transportation, rather than what are the needs for people coming from the suburbs, coming into the city and ending up polluting folks and communities that are living on the highway, which is what highways have done across the country. So when I think of infrastructure, I think about climate justice. And I believe that communities of color, that low income communities who have been most negatively impacted by the climate choices of our society need to be centered as we imagine what our future looks like. So I believe that we need to ensure our water, air, and land is clean for future generations, like my sons and future families. And I believe that changing our infrastructure and building a more robust public transportation system is one way to do that.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now move on to Kevin.
Hey, great question. And I'm going to answer this in 4 ways. I'm going to talk about comprehensive investments in green infrastructure. I'm going to talk about something very briefly. It's very local, related to the Midtown Greenway. I'm going to talk about carbon-free electricity and how we need to get there by 2040. And I'm going to talk about the need for urban and community forestry, something very passionate to me. First, on green transportation. People know this. It's the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions in Minnesota. Mass transit is, underdeveloped statewide. It doesn't accommodate the wide range of trips. We can do so much more. We have an issue right now with Southwest Light Rail. I think we can overcome that. Eventually, I'd like to see a society where mass transit is free. That's down the road. To the issue of the Greenway, this is really the highway that needs to cross over the Mississippi River. This is part of our district. We host the Midtown Greenway. I will get that done in the short term. To the matter of green transportation, 2040 is right around the corner. We still have a significant amount of our electricity that comes from carbon. This is infrastructure. This demands our attention. And as to urban and community forestry, this is an environmental justice issue. If you look at people who are low income or BIPOC communities, they don't enjoy the urban tree canopy that we do across the state. And so I've invested in this. I've put forth innovative new proposals. I will significantly raise urban and community forestry as a resilience strategy to help us make our communities more resilient in the face of the climate impacts that are occurring today and are going to become more significant in the future.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Zainab,
Yes. I think I'm unmuted, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You
Cool.
should be able to.
I think this is a really good question. Yeah, I do see myself. Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
If I had to, like when I think about this issue, I think about rapid decarbonization. I think about transit. I think about environmental protection. But if I had to choose one to focus on, I would focus on transit. We live in a big city. I would focus on expanding. Many people from our district really do rely on it. And I would ensure that by doing that, I would ensure that we're investing in transit operations so that everyone who relies on transit or who wants to rely on transit can count on frequent, reliable, comprehensive services to get them to their destination. I would focus on modernizing the Minnesota Department of Transportation, MDOT, to focus on their mission on reducing freeway expansion and instead prioritize mass transit projects. I know there's a number of projects at the House and at the Senate level that some incredible senators like Frank Hornstein is working on. I would expand on electric vehicle charging infrastructure and financing in the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which I think we can get done through across the state. And I would focus on boosting funding for an all-electric public transportation system that prioritizes reliability and interconnectedness between our communities. So many people from our district rely on transit, rely on biking everywhere. And I think we are moving towards that direction to live in a more green, more cleaner environment. And I think in order to do that, we need to invest in these projects heavily.
Thank you very much. All right. And then we've got Yusra.
Yes. It's a great question, and everyone had great ideas. We've critically underfunded our infrastructure for decades. We had the 35 bridge, if you guys remember, collapsed, and it was in our city. So I think with the new funding we got from the federal government, it gives us a great opportunity to be able to upgrade our entire infrastructure and create good paying jobs for thousands of Minnesotans. We can also invest in our broadband. We've seen with the pandemic and how even with kids in the inner city, difficulty finding internet access, and we're in the 21st century, it should be easily accessible in the metro as well as in greater Minnesota, which it hasn't been the case. So we need to invest in that. We also need to invest in our fleet and make sure that our mass transit is accessible, work towards electrical vehicles in the future so we can come down on our carbon emission, and also build more rapid transit line to greater Minnesota so that we can build better connections. There are a variety of things that we can do. We can protect our water, make sure that we protect our green spaces and protect the environment, and use some of the funding to, like I said, upgrade everything from roads to bridges and so forth and so on that need maintenance and are long overdue. I would also look into appropriating money for communities who've been harmed by the construction of these highways, like the Rondo community with the 94 and in North Minneapolis. They should be able we should be able to pay back and invest in those communities and kind of deconstruct the harm that has been done for decades. So those are some of the key priorities I would look into when it comes into our infrastructure and investments.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so for this round, starting with Kevin, the question is, what are your plans for healthcare options in Minnesota? Would you support a single payer plan sponsored by the state?
Thanks for that, Eric. Absolutely. Short answer to your question. I would automatically become a co-sponsor of the Minnesota Healthcare Plan. I do believe Medicare for all is the approach for us. We need to model that at the state level. It's ultimately something Congress needs to pass. I think we need to stage our way into Medicare for all, dropping down the age limits from the current down to 60, down to 50, maybe adding people who have chronic health conditions earlier in the process. But I've been very clear from the beginning, healthcare is a human right. Our current, system is broken. It's a profit-based system. People can't afford the deductibles. They can't afford the co-payments. This is a real crisis. I feel for the elected officials, our DFL colleagues. They have been putting up a good fight. And this is a brief opportunity, I think, for me to talk about the poison in our democracy, which relates to dark money. And one reason we don't have better health coverage in America is because of money that has entered into both sides of our politics. So if you're looking for a way to differentiate between the three candidates, you need to know that I am only accepting contributions from people $200 and less. And people, I'm not accepting money from PACs. I'm not accepting money from law firms. I'm not accepting healthcare money, big pharma money. We need to get the money out of politics if we're going to move forward on public health and Medicare for all.
Okay. And next, Zainab.
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. It's a really important one. And, on a personal level, I've been talking about this a lot during the campaign trail. I have healthcare for the first time this year on January. It's because I work in Minneapolis. My mother never had healthcare in her life. And what the government can do in the midst of crisis, when a global pandemic, government can show up for them in crisis and give them it happen just in the midst of crisis, because some people do live in crisis every single day of their lives. We live in the wealthiest nation in the world, and it is unacceptable that over 1 million Minnesotans either don't have health insurance or cannot afford the care that they need. I believe that your healthcare should not depend upon your job, immigration status, or your income. That is why I personally support John Marty's single payer proposals known as the Minnesota Health Plan. And if elected, I will do everything in my power to ensure that everyone has healthcare every single day of their job, every single day of their lives, and it should not depend on their jobs or their employment.
Okay, thanks. And Yusra.
Am I muted? Yes, this is a really good question, and it's an issue that is near and dear to me. As someone with a autoimmune disorder or chronic condition, I understand the importance of accessible and affordable healthcare. We need to ensure that every Minnesotan has access to care that they need when they need it. And I believe the COVID-19 pandemic laid bare to the importance of investing in our collective health. And for me, just like Zainab said, growing up, I didn't have healthcare. And when I was unexpected diagnosed 10 years ago, I had to quit my job and get on medical assistance in order to be able to even afford any of my medications or treatment. And that is unfortunate. And ever since then, I contemplate whatever job I'm going to get, depending on what benefits I get, because my life literally depends on that. So for me, I 100% would support moving towards a single payer healthcare plan like the Minnesota Health Plan. I mean, my life depends on it, and many Minnesotans. I would move towards protecting everyone's rights to comprehensive reproductive care, increase funding for mental health and addiction services, which is key in combating our public safety and our housing issues. As a mental health practitioner, I saw firsthand the need for treatment and services that are adequate, especially for BIPOC community when it comes to mental health and substance abuse issues. I would also support improving the transparency of medical providers and prescription drug pricing. One of my medication costs $1,000 a month. I mean, without healthcare, I would not be able to afford it, and that should not be the case. I mean, Minnesota is a very wealthy, well-off state, and we should be able to provide the basic needs of our residents, and healthcare is a human right, and that's what I believe. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's see. We're on. Let me make sure we're on the right one. Okay, Samantha.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would absolutely be a supporter of the Minnesota Health Plan. I believe that we need a healthcare system that prioritizes people over profits. And right now, we have a healthcare crisis in terms of coverage and access, worker shortages, and culturally responsive care. I think the place I want to start is with a crisis that anyone that has been living in the Twin Cities knows about, which is the opioid crisis. You know, as a young person who grew up here, I have seen that the way that the opioid crisis has completely ravaged and taken over our community. It has affected me personally. I have, lost friends, classmates, loved ones to this disease. And I know that one of the issues that we have is that we just do not have enough culturally responsive ways to deal with mental health and deal with addiction. I believe that we need to, first and foremost, ensure that people have healthcare access so they can get the support they need, so they can get the recovery that they need. But we also need to make sure that we are funding and investing in culturally appropriate health centers, because we know there are lots of different ways to approach recovery. And we know that one way is not working for everyone. I think additionally, we have a healthcare crisis in terms of workers. There are so many amazing healthcare workers in this district. And from a labor perspective, there's so many different positions, personal care assistants, long-term healthcare facility workers, medical assistants, nurses, and more. We need to make sure that these folks are well paid and supported so they can keep serving our communities. Especially in the pandemic, we have seen how vital they are to keeping our communities going. And so they need to be compensated appropriately.
All right, Amy, you're next up with the next question.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next question is, apologies. How would you address the skyrocketing cost of housing in our state, especially as it relates to people with low income? We will start out with Zainab on the first call here. Zainab, I do believe your bandwidth has been a little bit low. I do know it helps to have your video off. Do you want me to do that for you right now? Is that okay, or?
Yeah, I think that might help. Let me know if it's still low. I'm going to try to join it from my phone if it is. Is that better, Amy?
Yeah, this is better.
Okay. Yes. How would you address that? Yeah, I think I believe that housing is a human right, just as I believe that healthcare is a human right. Every Minnesotan should have the right to safe, secure, affordable housing. And in order to guarantee housing as a human right, we must invest in the construction of thousands of new public housing units while protecting the displacement of our most vulnerable communities. As rent goes up while wages stay the same, now is the time to take immediate actions to protect current tenants and curb future rent increases. As somebody who's moved around a lot, I come from a family where I had 10 siblings and 2 parents, which means we never really had a housing that fit us. And I think that a lot of people who have similar experiences to my family have the same issues that we are having within our housing crisis. I think we are in a crisis, and I think we need to take better precautions. We need to invest in better projects to create more housing, and not just more housing, but more that can actually ensure that more families are able to live in there. Most of my 2 bedrooms, and the most bedrooms we had in Minneapolis was 4 bedrooms. I think we can do better as a community and society and show up for communities who have bigger families. So I believe that housing is a human right. I think that we need to invest in the construction of thousands of new public housing and ensure that we're not displacing more other communities, especially our most vulnerable communities. And so what I will do personally is, if elected, I'll work with our local elected officials to find solutions and reduce the wait for periods for approval for low-income housing, because as we know it, most families who need low-income housing need to wait for an approval, and that often can take years. And so I will also support state bonding financing for public housing projects, because I think that's important. And I will reverse the history of redlining, which is very real and still happening in Minneapolis, and address historical inequities in housing by removing racial barriers from housing needs.
Okay, and
Um,
next is Yusra.
Muted. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. This is a important question. As a byproduct of our public housing authority, I understand the importance of a stable, safe home. For decades, Minneapolis has suffered from an affordable housing crisis, and it was not highlighted. The political will wasn't there to make sure that we tackle this head on. We know that the affordable housing crisis disproportionately impacts Black, Indigenous, immigrant, and communities of color, along with members of the LGBT community. For me, as I have a long history when it comes to housing, not only living in public housing and later on Section 8, but working at City Hall, working within the community. And the biggest issues that I dealt with on a daily basis dealt with housing, whether it's someone who needs an affordable unit waiting 15 to 10 years to get accepted, whether it's a voucher or a slumlord taking advantage of residents. I believe providing funding, direct funding to shelters, especially making sure that it's culturally appropriate shelters and adequate isn't key. Prioritizing funding for low barrier and culturally specific housing is also key in combating this. Connecting funding for mental health and chemical health services to housing navigation center is another important aspect we need to look at, and providing local governments with resources necessary to address their specific challenges in housing affordability and stable housing or unsheltered homelessness. We also need to enact some form of renters' rights to protect vulnerable communities, increase funding for programs aimed at helping BIPOC communities build pathways to home ownership so that they can build generational wealth. There are a variety of things we could do. We can allocate bonding bills for our public housing authorities to be able to build and maintain the current stock that they have. HUD has historically cut funding to our housing authorities, hence the reason why there isn't adequate units available. And also working with the county and the city to allocate a levy for our public housing authority so that they can maintain the current stock they have, but then build upon it. At this current rate, this issue is just going to get worse, and the pandemic has made things a lot worse. So it's a very dire issue that needs to be addressed adequately, and that is what I plan on prioritizing if I get elected to this position.
Okay, and next, okay, right. Samantha.
Thank you. Housing is an incredibly important and complicated issue. You know, some of the things that I have been talking to delegates on the phone about housing relate to a few different things. You know, one is I hear lots of concern for our unhoused neighbors who are living in encampments, especially in the winter months. I hear people talking about working for decades and still not being able to buy homes. I hear people being afraid of being priced out of homes because of gentrification. And I hear a lot of talk about what rent stabilization could do for a city. I know that we need housing policies that reflect our values of equity, safety, and care. So I would support increasing public housing. You know, something I'm hearing a lot from people is how is it that we are building all of these new developments that are kind of changing the architecture, changing the face of our community, and yet we still have unhoused neighbors who are living in encampments. We need to focus on who new developments are for, who they are serving, and how they are helping us out of this housing crisis. I would work to get bonding and funds for building affordable single-family homes and apartment buildings, as well as public housing. And relating it back to climate justice, we need to ensure that we are increasing housing density, that we are prioritizing affordable housing that is energy efficient, and we need to help homeowners retrofit their homes for increased efficiency. We absolutely need to protect renters' rights. We need to fight against policies that allow and protect predatory landlords. And finally, we need to address the homeownership gap because we know that owning a home is one of the best ways in this country to build wealth. And some people have been systematically kept out of that process. I believe in funding programs like the Community Land Trust. Housing is a form of safety, and reimagining housing can be one of the ways we address climate change and improve our public safety systems. And access to housing is one place where we can have policies that reflect our values of equity and care.
Okay, and Kevin.
Great question, and thank you. One thing I say to delegates is that I'm very clear about the office in which I am seeking. I'm not running for mayor. I'm not running for city council. I'm not running for a seat on the Met Council. I'm clear about my role in the office I seek, which is the State House of Representatives. What I'm hearing from delegates are many of the things that have been spoken about. One of the things we haven't talked about, though, is seniors, people wanting to age in place, people wanting additional affordable housing for seniors. And I think there is a role for the legislature to really help with that. That's an issue that crosses over aisles. That's an issue that is very apparent in greater Minnesota. Also, I think housing, it's about increasing the quantity of housing. Samantha, you spoke to it. I agree. There's an opportunity for density. We need to do that. I'm interested in investing in refurbishing public housing. We have a lot of it. A lot of it needs investments, new mechanicals. We've paid for it. We need to keep it in operation. One thing a House of Representatives, a legislature can do is the capital bonding. That's a perfect opportunity. I will go to bat as a state legislator for capital bonding for housing here in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, and throughout the state. General revenue dollars, that factors into it too. I just want to lastly say that there's a big role to play here in the federal government. We have an impasse at the federal government. A lot of that impasse is percolating at the state level. We have to break through that and come together as a community and look for solutions and bridge differences.
All right. And so let's roll on to our next question here. And this one is going to start with Yusra. The question is, the state has a lot of control over the factors that lead to climate change, like car-centric transportation. What sort of bills and actions will you pursue in the legislature to mitigate climate change? You're still, no, you're muted. There you go.
I think I'd get the hang of this after 3 years. Thank you for the question. We need to address our climate crisis head on if we're going to have a safe and equitable communities for our children to live in and thrive in. So often people look at me so often people who look like me in my community deal with the brunt of climate injustice and live in areas that suffer from pollution, other chemical. So what we need to do is prioritize initiatives like enacting Minnesota Green New Deal, enacting a 100% clean energy standard, investing in workforce development to provide employment and job training for opportunities for underserved communities, especially BIPOC communities who have dealt with the brunt of environmental injustice, invest in mass transit throughout the state, electrical vehicle infrastructure, make sure that we are preparing for that when we're with the infrastructure bill, mobility hubs and other mechanisms that support increased mobility with fewer cars and less driving. And we have a surplus. We have a $9 billion surplus. And I think the 2022 Minnesota Climate Action Plan illustrates a lot of great things that we can invest in to make sure that we have a greener future for Minnesota and that we're a leader in a green energy. And I think now is the time to invest in critical areas, such as our environment, making sure that we protect our boundary waters, making sure that we protect our green spaces, and that we are able to provide for our constituents with cleaner air and drinking water and food supply as well. I also think often BIPOC communities are left out of the solution when it comes to environmental issues. You typically see the same group of people. I think it would be helpful to raise awareness and education in certain communities who deal with the brunt of environmental injustice and bring them to the fold so that they can be part of the solution and champion for these issues. And I think we tend to forget that. And that is something that I plan on working on it and making sure that I can bring new folks into the fold. Thank you.
Okay, and same question, Samantha.
Thank you. You know, when I think about climate change, I think about resiliency. And I know that our community is incredibly resilient. I think probably a lot of you were very resilient today when you looked outside and saw that on March 30th, we had a snowstorm and once again had to go to your car and spend the time, you know, wiping it off. We show resilience all the time, and we need to be resilient and adaptable in the face of climate change. We need a climate justice framework that ensures people of color and low income communities who have been most negatively impacted by our climate choices as a society are centered in all of our policies. So some things that I'm really passionate about, you know, I think a place where our values as Minnesotans has not kept up with our policies is really around water. You know, no one can say that in Minnesota we don't value our water. We're the land of 10,000 lakes. You know, it's one of the things that makes Minnesota a really great place. And yet we have not been true to that value around pipelines and Line 3. So I think we absolutely need to oppose future pipelines. Additionally, you know, I think we need to transition into creating green jobs. And one way we can do that is a public transportation system that is electrified, accessible, frequent, and reliable. You know, over the next 10 years, we are really going to have to shift and be adaptable to changing our car culture. I know that there are already people who are doing that. My partner and I have moved to just using one car, and we need to make sure that our infrastructure keeps up with that while creating new jobs. We also need to reimagine public spaces so that green spaces are more abundant for everyone. We need to make sure these spaces are pedestrian, bike, and wheelchair friendly, and that they promote walkability and accessibility to places like our small businesses. And we need to increase housing density, prioritizing affordable housing that is energy efficient, again, to ensure that those who have been historically excluded from housing are brought along in the process, and allowing homeowners to retrofit their homes for increased efficiency. I am super proud to have the endorsement of environmental and transit justice activists and small business owners who care deeply about climate justice. I will work to ensure that all of our families have access to clean air, water, and land, and again, that we have policies that reflect our values around climate and environmental justice.
Okay, and making sure I got it in the right order. Kevin.
Well, obviously, this is my issue, and I appreciate the comments of the other candidates on this. Very good. You know, I've spoken to the Min 350 coalition about this. I mean, we have to, you know, I think live up to the fact that, you know, we've been in a divided government here at the state level, most certainly at the national level. And so, you know, we need to secure the short-term gains and also have a long game at the same time. And so, you know, in an earlier question in my introductory remarks, I made reference to the program Minnesota Green Corps, this AmeriCorps program that I started 13 years ago with others, that has provided AmeriCorps experiences for 500 people to work at the community level on things that Samantha spoke about, on resiliency, on those practical things that communities can do to address the climate impacts that they're experiencing today. My big idea is to scale that up where thousands of Minnesotans, of young people, people in the middle of their life, people who are recently retired, people looking to break into the green economy, can provide a year of service and support communities in the movement to reduce greenhouse gases and to move toward resiliency. So that's a short-term thing. I think that's nonpartisan. I think that's something I can reach across to Republicans and secure their support for. It's a big idea. We could become a national model. It's something that's in the near term solution. Another near term solution, everywhere you look in your life, in your home, in the grocery store you visit, in a commercial building or office building you attend, has HFCs, these hydrofluorocarbons. They're the one of the number one and persistent greenhouse gases, and they are going to be phased out. Republicans care about business. We can get started right away and become a national model on that. I'll close here and just say that I am supportive of the Minnesota Climate Action Plan. Delegates, if you haven't looked at that, it's really well done by our Minnesota House reps. You really should look it up. I have a link on my website. It lays out a good program.
Thank you.
And I would co-sponsor that legislation.
Thank you, Kevin. We appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, we do need to move on to Zainab now.
This should be better. I think it'll work just fine.
Can you hear me? Good. Yes, the sound is good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is also a really important question. I think when it comes to climate, we are running out of time. Addressing climate change provides us with a unique opportunity to advance a sustainable economy, protect communities of color that have been disproportionately impacted by climate change, and create thousands of green and union jobs in the process. I think we have an opportunity to do that. So personally, I support rapidly decarbonizing the transportation and energy production sectors, which produces over 50% of emissions in the United States by 2030. I think this is achievable. Introducing a carbon fee and dividend systems, and this would place a price on carbon and return the revenue back to Minnesotans through direct cash. I support legislations known as Prove It First, which requires any new mining to undergo an independent and rigorous environmental review process conducted over the course of several years, preventing the construction of new and fossil fuel infrastructure projects. Instead, I support the development of development of a renewable energy grid. And I'll make this clear. I oppose Line 3. We must hold Enbridge accountable for the environmental destructions they have inflicted upon Indigenous communities across our state, and take every possible. We have an opportunity to take every possible action to safeguard our watersheds, particularly the boundary waters, which are so precious and important to not all of Minnesotans, but particularly to our district. I've met so many people over the course since December who I've spoken on the phone with, who have met in person, who are like, I've been going to the boundary waters, or my family has been going. And I think we need to save that and ensure that we are making that a priority and not things like Line 3. So I think we're running out of time. Those are the things I would work on.
Thank you very much. All right, now let's go to our second to last round, which will be kind of a somewhat of a catch-all round where the candidates will each get a chance to provide any elaboration or expansion on any of the topics that we've talked about, or a chance to discuss a topic that is near and dear to them that we haven't had a chance to bring up yet. For this round, we're going to start out with Samantha and then go to Kevin, then Zainab, and then Yusra.
Yeah, thank you. For this question, I want to talk about my approach to public safety because, it's been coming up on every single delegate call that I'm having. So I believe that our community is safe when we all have our basic needs met. And to me, that means safe and stable schools for the young people in our community, healthcare systems that prioritize our real needs over profits, especially the incredible mental health needs that we are seeing right now in our community. And then we have housing for all, because we know that people are safer when they are housed. And I believe that even when we have those basic needs met, there will always be emergency or crisis situations. There will always be a time when the people in a given situation need outside support and outside intervention. So that's why I believe we need more services to ensure that we can send the right support to the situation whether that is co-responders, specific mental health supports, housing advocates to work with unhoused communities, or addiction outreach experts. I'm hearing a lot of frustration from community members about our current public safety system. People are feeling like it is ineffective. People are feeling like it is not helping to prevent or solve crime. And we know that the police in Minneapolis have been shown that they can be harmful, violent, and deadly. That is why my neighbors and I came together in Corcoran after the murder of George Floyd, because we needed to rely on each other to be safe. I believe that we need to build public safety systems that are effective, transparent, and accountable. And I do believe the state can play a role in making that happen. There is real fear in our community right now around harms and crimes being committed. At the same time, I know that we can agree that our current system of public safety is inadequate in addressing the challenges that we face. I believe that we need an approach to public safety that is holistic, an approach that recognizes the terrible and racist history of policing, and an approach that seeks to reimagine public safety with broad community input.
Yeah. All right, now we'll go to Kevin.
Thank you very much. So people have heard enough from me about climate change. I think I've explained that that is the center of my candidacy here. But I do agree with Samantha. Public safety, has come up, almost every time I speak to or knock on a delegate's door. So we should talk about that as candidates. I go back to the first months of Paul Wellstone, and I got to thinking about Wellstone, just in the context of this race. And I am no Paul Wellstone, but I found a quote that really resonated with me, and he said, if we consign ourselves merely to the poetic utopian discussion of what should be and neglect the prosaic practical work of politics that is, we doom ourselves to the margins of political life. And so what does that mean, and how does that influence my candidacy and your decision on April 9th? For public safety, I've been knocking on doors, and we have a divided DFL. It's spilled into the region, it's spilled statewide, it's spilled nationwide, to the extent that President Biden is speaking about Minneapolis public safety in his State of the Union address. And so I am calling for effective, professional, service-oriented public safety. It's really core to what everybody rightly expects from their government. And Minneapolitans, the average citizen, we want a positive path for improved public safety. They don't want to feel abandoned or marginalized. And so if you go to my website, you will see a series of 10 ideas that are very realistic. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
All right. We'll now go to Zainab.
Yes, thank you so much, Amy. Thank you all for coming together and hearing all of us speak about the issues that are most important to us, why they're important to us, and what we're running on. I'm really excited to be running for this seat. I first want to thank our current Senator, Patricia Torres Rey, for the incredible work she's done for our state over the past 15 years. She has really led our district with tenacity and respect and grit, and I'm honored to be running for this seat. And I think right now we're in a divided government in the Senate. It's important that we keep the House, but it's also really important that we take back the Senate. In order to do that, I'm asking you, all of you in this room, to come together, to stick together, to ensure that we have DFL endorsements in our Senate district, and that we work together to flip the Minnesota Senate. If we don't, we have a big problem in our hands. You've seen what's happening at the national level when it comes to reproductive rights. If we lose the governor and we get a Republican governor, we are really in trouble. I personally will fight for all the issues I've spoken about: $15 minimum wage across the state of Minnesota, paid family and medical leave, economic recovery that ensures that all of us can get back to being on our feet, and housing is a human right. all these issues are important to me. I'm running on issues that have impacted me because I know ways that our government can show up for us. And I know ways that policies can be impacted in a good way and in a bad way. And because I've had these experiences, I will work every day tirelessly alongside you to ensure that we get that. I hope that you will support me on April 9th for the DFL endorsement. And I hope that you will work with me, not just this next year, but the next few years, because together we will be able to do some incredible things. I really appreciate you for having me.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Yusra.
Thank you. I'm also going to elaborate on the topic of our time, which is public safety. I believe that governments at all levels have invested in policing and prosecution and prisons as their main tool for addressing societal failures that we haven't adequately addressed in other means. This is extremely devastating and leaves a disproportionate impact on Black and Brown lives. Police violence, especially when it comes to BIPOC communities, is a major way that structural racism manifests itself. Until our governments invest in supporting and strengthening our communities rather than criminalizing and controlling them, that violence will not stop. And in order to make this happen, we need to come together to demand reform and reconstruction of our systems. We have the opportunity to truly address these issues at the state level. Let me start by saying what everybody is thinking. Let's ensure that everyone's basic needs are met. That is the bare minimum. We also need to enact policies like robust civilian oversight of police, increase investment in community-led violence prevention and public safety initiatives in order to build back trust that we have lost. We also need to end qualified immunity, enable the police officer standard board, the post board, to perform compliance reviews, education, training, and investigative work and discipline so that their profession can be the same as any other profession. When you do misconduct, you pay the consequences. We also need to require our officers to carry their own professional liability insurance. We need to reform our arbitration systems and remove tools that police officers use to excuse for inequities, doing inequities by legalizing marijuana and regulating adult use cannabis and looking at our traffic policies and looking to see what we can change. That is only the beginning. We must address these systemic failures holistically and at every level if we're going to have a city and a state that is fair, just, and safe. I also want to acknowledge that when it comes to how we will vote, all three of us will practically vote the same way. The choice we have before us right now really comes down to what type of leader you would want to represent you at the Capitol. I believe I'm uniquely positioned to meet the needs of our district because I have the lived experience and the professional experience.
Thank you. We do got to move on now to, we're going to take just short closing statements now for 1 minute from each candidate. We'll start with Kevin, then go to Zainab, then Yusra, and then Samantha. Kevin, are you able to?
Yeah, working on it. Thank you.
Thanks.
See if I can get my camera going. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So, there it is. Excellent. So just in summary, it's been a long night and I appreciate delegates hanging in there. I've shared with you my record of innovation as an environmental leader for the last 35 years. I don't have all the answers. I see power in our district, the talent, the wisdom, and if elected, I would tap into that. I do have quite a record of community involvement, both in our neighborhoods as well as in our schools. I've laid forth, I think, really results-oriented platforms. I've made it plain that climate change is my #1 issue. We're sleepwalking our way into the future. I just wanted to, for those of you who get the Star Tribune, please do turn to page #2, another United Nations report here asking for a radical shift, urging to slow climate change. So, please join me on that. I am I think the practical community oriented candidate here, and look forward to seeing everybody on April 9th. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move to Zainab.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Awesome. I'll go and reintroduce myself. My name is Zainab Mohammed. I'm an organizer. I'm a working class immigrant. I'm a renter. I'm a neighbor in the Coker neighborhood. And I'm running to represent you in the Minnesota Senate to make our lives easier, not harder. Like many first-generation immigrants in our community, I have the first-hand experience of navigating our government systems that impact our lives. Having seen what the government is capable of doing during the COVID-19 crisis, that was when I began to see what our government is capable of doing. Cover health, COVID-19 health costs, freeze evictions, provide direct economic relief to businesses, and expand unemployment benefits. I think we can do that. And I think we should do that, not just in the midst of a global pandemic or of when people are in crisis, but every day, because every day families like mine have survived through some of the worst crises. And I can't help but to question why our government isn't able to do that every day. I'm running because I care. I care about our community. I care about this district. I care about what our government is capable of delivering. And I'm running to represent you, but I'm running to represent you and hopefully work with you to flip the Senate so that we can get the work that's most important done.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Let's jump now to Yusra.
Thank you. Once again, let me start off by thanking everyone involved in making tonight possible. I know this is a very important forum as folks start to make decisions on who they would support and would like to represent them. So many of these pressing issues we discussed tonight are issues that are near and dear to me because I have lived them. I'm a byproduct of our Affordable Housing Authority. In fact, it was in Longfellow, the first neighborhood that I lived in when we initially moved here to America. As someone with a chronic condition, I understand the difficulties of navigating our fragmented healthcare system and the difficulties that come along with it. I also understand what it means to be marginalized, othered because of who I am or what I look like. I understand the worries that the worries that we have for our future generation as I look at my daughter. This is the reason why I'm running. Once elected, I'll be a fierce advocate for ensuring that every Minnesotan has their basic needs met, that they feel safe and welcomed in our state and have access to upward mobility. It has been an honor for me to partake in this forum. I want to thank you all for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to you tonight, and I hope to earn your support at our convention on April 9th. And I want to thank you all, and that is it. Have a good night.
Thank you. And lastly, we've got Samantha Sensamura.
Thank you. I want to end tonight with what gives me hope, because I would not be in this race if I did not have hope for the future of our community. So in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and the protests, I struggled as the leader of a community organization. One of the things I struggled with was what to do with our building. We have a beautiful, creative, and safe space for students in the Seward neighborhood, a youth writing center that students from all over the Twin Cities and especially our district come to for out of school time programming. And I was being urged by our landlord at that moment to board up our windows, to put wooden boards over the windows because we didn't know what was going to happen over those few days. And so I came when we were putting the wooden boards on the windows, and I was really worried about what kind of message that was going to send to the young people. It seemed like it was going to send a message of fear, of shutting them out. And so what I decided to do was I decided to take all of the student writing that we have at our center, all of their beautiful and brilliant words, and overlay the boards with their writing. Those wooden boards that were once, showing fear were transformed into messages of hope and power. The students' words reminded me that we already have the brilliance we need in our community to move us forward, and we just need to nurture it. Our community has the values that we need to move us forward, and we need our policies to match it. And that's why I'm asking for your support at the convention on April 9th.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, to all of our candidates who participated today for answering all of these questions. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question to our using the web form. Thank you to everybody who came to listen today. And thank you to everybody who's going to be attending our convention on April 9th. We will be sending out more information via email about our about the convention with a Zoom link and everything like that. And we will be posting this this forum, a recording of it, to our YouTube page shortly. Thank you again to everyone. We really appreciate your attendance tonight, and we hope you have a pleasant evening. Thank you.